lanes to keep right.
Hey friends, it is Tuesday, September 14, 2021. Welcome back or welcome aboard to Prepare to Go There. I'm thinking it's like the most overlooked and underrated coaching conversation. And it's so important that we have this conversation because we've got to be focused on the future. Other people won't be doing this work for us. This is the necessary and unnoticed preparation that we have to be doing. So let's take on the future together with some friends, right? I want to welcome you back to the Future Frontier, where we are learning how to lead ourselves and stay focused on what's possible and what's important. My name is Peter, and it has been so much fun going on this extended coaching journey with you. I think we're on episode 62, which is amazing. And we're talking about retooling our time. So it's a lot of time mapping, not just time management. We can get into that later. But I want to start with the why if you're new to this YouTube channel and this project. It's been my experience and observation that most people don't know how to lead themselves or others into a better future. Even if they have a title, even if they have some sort of positional leadership, that doesn't guarantee that we're going to be delivering on our promises. And people can have good intentions, but the challenge is what's going on beneath the surface. Like everything can be looking good on the public view, but it's the private side and it's really the practical execution of the leader that is going to make or break the vision, the mission that they're talking about. And so it's self-leadership. It's not everything, but it is where everything starts. You lead yourself, and then you lead others, and then you can lead through others. That's a really long journey for leaders to go on. So we might as well go on it together. So that way we don't quit and we don't forget that we have somewhere to get to, right? And so this is all about learning the mindsets and the skill sets to lead ourselves and to go into that future that we're hoping on, that we're waiting on, that we're working towards. Lead yourself there first, and then you can be the proof of concept to lead others with you. And so that's how we got into Prepare to Go There. It is a daily coaching journey for friends and leaders alike who want to figure out how to stay focused practically on the future. And then how do we figure out how to lead ourselves there tactically day by day, really taking action, really taking ownership, being intentional, self-leadership, focus, and all the above. So if this resonates with you, I want to invite you to be a part of our email community. I email the Future Friends once a week with kind of a roundup or a bundle of all of this coaching content. And then you can enjoy that at your own time. I'm working on some projects with you in mind. And so I can't wait to share that with you. And that's where I'll be communicating first, giving the info and the incentives to the Future Friends. Now, we're going to get into this topic at hand. How do we retool ourselves for the future? And I think this quote sums up what I mean. Tom Peters said, "Only those who constantly retool will stand the chance of staying employed in the years ahead." Now, I'm going to paraphrase that because I want it to sink in. Only those who constantly retool themselves will stand the chance of staying engaged in the years ahead. The definition of retool is basically to re-equip with tools to reorganize, to modify, to improve. And that's what we have to do. And we need different tools, different tactics in order to stay organized, in order to help others be mobilized. And so I really was so excited about this conversation. It's really what I'm working on right now. Thankfully, I've been here many times before, so I'm geeking out again and I'm having fun with this, and it's not as intimidating as it was initially. And so this is my way of just paying this forward to as many friends and leaders as I can. And I want to talk about the tactics that I'm using to retool my time and my weekly planning, more specifically. Let me get into this. So, tactics to retool your weekly planning. Now, you may or may not want to hear this, but I'm just going to tell you from my own experience that I'm convinced the most productive tool you can be using to work on your future, to stay focused, to practice intentionality, to model self-leadership is your calendar. Your calendar. All right? Your calendar is the best place to work on your life, whether that's your habits, your goals, your projects, your commitments, everything. And the reason I love the calendar so much, even more than a to-do list, even more than task manager, even more than whatever else you're rocking with. I have other tools. I work in Asana. I work in Evernote. I work with Google with our team. I do meetings with other leaders. I'm making content and I'm coaching. I'm doing a lot of different things. But for me personally, we're talking about self-leadership. For me personally, the calendar is the best place to work on myself. And here's why. The calendar is that one tool that puts you in a time-sensitive context. So it just kind of puts your whole brain in a different mode. You're not in kind of a woulda, coulda, shoulda mode. You're actually in a real-world, real-time environment. And so there are time constraints. And you can visualize how long things are going to take or how far things are from you in terms of months or weeks or days. You can organize the flow of the work you want to do. And it puts you in that real-time environment, which is so mission critical. And a lot of people don't take their time seriously. I mean, they're keeping minutes and wasting hours just by, overthinking, over planning, kind of mulling over things in a more reactive way or however that goes. But I want to tell you that your time is mission critical. And so I'm going to give you the tactics for a weekly planning session. But I don't want you to think that I'm some calendar ninja. I don't want you to think that my head is always in the calendar clouds all the time, because it's not. I don't really use the calendar to keep up with life at all. It's more of a canvas that I'm using to design and map out the routines, the rhythms, the workflows that I can be practicing as a lifestyle approach. And so for me, just as a disclaimer, keeping a calendar is not nearly as important as taking ownership of the way you use your time. So don't think that we're going to get like super geeky and talk about like widgets and setups for your calendar. Maybe we can get into that on Future Friday. But what I really want you to feel is the personal responsibility to take ownership of your time. You are responsible for the way you use, the way you lose or the way you abuse your time. You can use your time well, or you can get confused on where it's going. You can definitely abuse it through carelessness or through foolishness, or you can redeem that time. It's by default going to go away from you. You're going to lose it by default. If you don't get engaged, and if you just let life happen as is, time will run away from you. And it will go in the direction of entropy. It will go in the direction of delay and decay. But you and I have a God-given ability to be creative, to be constructive and productive, to be intentional and relational. We have this amazing privilege to roll up our sleeves, to get engaged in the moments of our life and to make them count, right? To move forward into the future with purpose, with humility and authenticity, and to do meaningful work, to do stuff that matters, so that way we can leverage the lives and our life's work. So I want you to just feel the onus right now. If you like where things are going, you did something to get here. If you don't like the way things are going, you did something to get here. And at first, that's, not cool. That's like, being sunburned after hanging outside a long time. I get sunburned, so that's not a good feeling. But you can also take it as an encouragement, as an instruction to think differently and then do differently. Without an intentional approach, you and I will use the calendar to just keep up with other people's stuff. The calendar is not supposed to get cluttered with everybody else's reminders and routines and projects and obligations. If your calendar is something you dread, it's probably because you're not taking ownership of that time. If you feel allergic to your calendar, it's probably because you're letting other people have the initiative, other people fill and make all of these moments. They're making decisions for you, not with you. And so you've got to reclaim that sense of ownership and empowerment, so that way you are willing to actually make decisions for yourself. And then you are focused on making your commitments good. The first thing that you and I need to commit on the calendar, if we're really going to practice this, is a weekly planning session. A weekly planning session. That's going to be the guts of our conversation today. If you haven't done this sort of thing yet, or if you haven't done this sort of thing in a while, don't get hyper focused on the perfect planning day. What's the best day for my weekly planning session? As long as it's not someday, then you're good, because someday is not a day of the week. So just pick a day. Hopefully it's today, right? Do it today. Try it today. You could literally get started with 30 minutes, be a huge lift. It would give you more morale, more momentum. Just try it today. Immediately, you're feeling kind of interested. Maybe you're even inspired. Do it today, and you'll figure out what it should look like as you go. But if you're just kind of waiting and kind of backpedaling, and I think I'm going to try Fridays. No, that didn't work. No, I'm going to do Sundays. No, that didn't work. I'm going to do Mondays. Then you're losing valuable time. Get started. Just do it today, and then eventually you'll find the right day that works for you. To have a effective weekly planning session, you're basically getting in your alone zone for about 30 to 90 minutes. Now, 30 minutes is bare minimum. 90 minutes is like dreamboat. It's super fun. But you're putting your flag in the future. You're saying, hey, on this day of the week, I'm going to kind of go off grid. I'm going to not be available, and I'm going to really give myself permission to get in my alone zone. Sometimes that's easier said than done. I get that. And that is why we have to really be intentional about making that time count. We can't get into this alone zone and then kind of wander mentally, and then we run out of time and we're like, oh no, that was my weekly planning session. You're telling me I was supposed to get ahead for the week, and then I didn't maximize or leverage that time. So what does that imply about your week? It means you don't have a plan. It means you haven't put in the work. And so I really believe that if you will just focus on this 1 hour weekly planning session, it'll be a fulcrum, or it'll be a point of leverage to force multiply the rest of your week. Maybe you feel kind of frustrated, kind of burned out, kind of discouraged about where things are or where things are going, and it feels overwhelming. It feels like overload. And you're like, I literally can't wrap my head around all of this stuff. I don't see a way forward. I don't have the motivation to throw myself back into all of this. And what I'm here to encourage you with is you just need about an hour's worth of focused involvement. Like, don't think about 168 hours. Just look at 1 hour. Try 1 hour. Give it one good, honest hour. And you'll be shocked at how you were able to, distill what's going on, and then to identify what you want to focus on next. And you'll be that much more ahead. We get away to get ahead. And this is something you can't fantasize or romanticize. It's not going to be like the Instagram, you got your latte. It's like this Instagram perfect moment, and everything is all like vibing and mood central. And you take an Instagram photo, and you got your journal, and you got your Bible open, and you got your laptop and all this stuff. Like, you kind of have to fight for this. It's going to be a little scrappy at first. You when you are so kind of uptight about the week, because you probably haven't. I'm just saying, if you haven't done this, and if you're not in the rhythm of doing this, you're already starting at a pretty edgy point. And so this is going to be a fight to kind of slow things down, to kind of get settled, to relax, to be present, and then to give your best effort into this moment. So what I like to do is get away. What I used to do is go find a coffee shop. And I do this for a few reasons. The first reason is that there's this obvious understanding that you can't be there forever. And you need that time crunch. You need that time constraint to really focus you. If you feel like, oh, I could be here for hours, I'm just going to dream, I'm going to journal, I'm going to read books. Sometimes we kind of idealize what's going to happen in our planning session. We're like, I'm going to read Bonhoeffer in like an hour. It's like, no, you're not. You're not. You're just not. I'm going to declutter my inbox. How many emails does it have? A few thousand. You're not. I mean, unless you just deactivate your whole account, you're not going to be able to process all this stuff. And so you need the time constraint to say, okay, I got to get in, I got to get this done, and I got to get out. Because if I put in an hour, it should give me the leverage I need to have a great week. And if it's taking you longer than an hour or longer than 90 minutes, there's probably some more backfilling and some more catching up that you need to do. The other reason I like the coffee shop is that you can kind of get ignored by other people, but still be in an environment that's moving around. It's kind of like that third space where people are coming and going, but they're not really like looking over your shoulder. And I, kind of appreciate that, because otherwise you can get kind of stifled and feel a little isolated and a little too far up. And then you're kind of like in your head and all these things are popping up. But just to have like a little bit of action going around you can help you lean forward into your weekly planning. When you first get started, I'm all for the vibe. If you can do it, it's not always going to happen. And I don't want you to spend all of your time. Like if you only have an hour, you can't spend all of your time trying to make a vibe. You have to just show up and get into it. And so, yeah, get the coffee, don't get like a huge latte or something over. You got to be there just to do work. Like get a drip house coffee or get a water. I mean, don't be cheap. I would always try to pay for a little bit extra. I would get like a bigger cup, because if I was showing up at this coffee shop every week, I don't want them thinking that I'm freeloading. I want to be thankful for their space. I want to be a good customer. I want to be nice to, the baristas. I want to get the big coffee. It's a house coffee. It's not like I'm trying to find that, appropriate price point. And I'm going to, be a good rep for the coffee shop. And then you kind of have to get the gears going. And so here are a few things. You can get some good headphones, get a jacket, get a charger, get something to write with if there's no Wi-Fi, get your laptop if you can bring that out. And what you're trying to do is remove all of the excuses, all of the things that could break down. You want to be able to kind of be like ready. You know what I mean? And then you put your phone on do not disturb. You put yourself on airplane mode. You like go alone, and then the clock is on. And I would literally set a timer. I would set the timer for 60 minutes or 90 minutes. And that would just help me kind of mentally keep track of where I was. Nowadays, I really enjoy just going on YouTube, and I'll find some of those focus like music videos where basically it's like ambient noise. So like today I was listening to just rain, just like a whole thing, just rain, like 3, 4, 5 hours of just rain. And it's kind of fills in that dead space so I can kind of focus. Also, there's some other like lo-fi instrumentals. I've tried doing like podcasts or things like that, but you really need to focus. And I think just these gentle nudges towards deep work really can help you. But I want to give you 2 tactics to help you kind of break through the fog and that kind of that blurry feeling. The first thing you can do is journal a short summary of what you're facing or what you're feeling at that moment. Just start getting things out. Just start personally venting. Doesn't have to be all polished. It's not Dear Diary, but it's just kind of the moment. Sometimes I feel like I have to catch up, from the last time I did this, but you really don't have to. It's just where are you right now? Just locate and summarize what you're facing, what you're feeling. What I've found is it gets you out of kind of this stuck feeling, and it gets you in motion. And at some point, you're just going to shift from, man, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm facing, to this is my plan. And I'm telling you, ideas will come, inspiration will come, instructions will come. You just start leaning forward, and it just builds this internal momentum, because you do have to get clear if you want to pioneer the next week, and figuring out and summarizing, okay, what's really going on? What's really around me? What's really happening? That's going to help you get settled in. The other thing that's kind of fun is, if I feel kind of overloaded, it's probably just I'm feeling a little too cluttered. And so at that point, I will literally just put on some music, or instrumental or ambient music, or ambient sound effect, or whatever. And I will just declutter my digital life, all of the emails and the files and organizing folders, because whenever you see a mess, you can just kind of get to work on that. And again, it's kind of a trick. If you're gonna like organize where you've been, it's going to help you build momentum for where you're going. Sometimes you can sit there, you have this writer's block, you got all of this stuff, filling up your head, filling up your desktop. And if you just kind of attack that first, not a long time, but just enough to kind of rearrange that, there's just a sense of momentum there. Now, don't let this be your whole time. You could put a timer on for maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes, get as far as you can. But what that's going to do is it's going to help you kind of move out of the shallow and into the deep end of your focus work. All right, now we're just ramping up here, so hang with me. The purpose of that weekly planning session is not to have a detailed, finished plan. Okay. That may or may not happen, right? Like I said yesterday, plans are nothing, but planning is everything. So what we're really focused on is taking ownership of our time and practicing intentionality. That's the win. The win is not that I've scripted this Olympic performance that I'm now just going to go run and do that week. The point is that wherever I've been feeling frazzled, wherever I've been feeling frustrated, wherever I've been feeling helpless, wherever I've been feeling disempowered, I'm now just like going through the process of admitting, you know what, there are things out of my control, but there are things in my control. And I'm gonna cast my cares on the Lord, and I'm gonna ask for wisdom, and I'm gonna keep moving forward. And so practicing intentionality is the win for this weekly planning session. And again, the truth is that we're not working on a perfect plan, right? This is not a one and done thing. We're going through the work of refocusing and then reframing what we already know into a more cohesive path forward. Let me say that again. We're just getting an inventory of what we already know is happening, and then we're going to reorganize or reorient that into a more cohesive workflow. The truth is that I still don't keep a calendar. I'm trying to be as honest and genuine as I can about this. I don't want you to get this idea that Peter's like all put together. I'm not a calendar ninja. And what I mean by that is I'm not like, oh, at 2:00 I'm doing this, and 3:15 I'm doing that, and there, and I got it all organized, and I'm multitasking. I'm not like some airport, traffic controller where I've got all of these moving parts and it's all well synchronized and choreographed. Like, if that's someone's job and they have time to put in that kind of coordination, then man, amazing, more power to you. I'm trying to leverage some of those skill sets and apply that in my own context. But what I'm really doing is I'm working on the same plan a little bit at a time every week. It's not like I'm reinventing the wheel. It's not like I'm making a whole new plan and a whole new week and everything's got to look fresh and everything's got to be novel. It's more about just staying synced up with the season of life that I'm in. And, you can have like a really good high power creative session and kind of dream about what's possible and identify what's important. And you kind of work on that in a journaling format. Maybe you can kind of map it out in a mind mapping exercise. And then you've got the guts of like a great month or 2 or 3 month view of what's in front of you. And then you're going to take week by week to say, okay, I did okay here. I needed to shore up there. I did 30% of that plan here. How am I going to re-engage so I can get to 50%? And you're just kind of shaping and shoring up on this big idea, this plan that you've been leaning towards for a while. And it's when you're designing an intentional approach to your week more than once over time that you begin to see routines emerge. You begin to see new rhythms surface. You're beginning to notice what's working. And now you can kind of reincorporate that. And that's creating this personal momentum because you're not starting your weekly planning center. Sorry. You're not starting your weekly planning session at 0, but you've already been making progress in that direction. Okay. So generally speaking, you're touching up on routines, you're fine-tuning some rhythms, you've identified the big rocks for each month, and then you're really working through time blocks and saying, okay, here's my framework. This is the way my mornings can go. This is the way my evenings can go. These are the meetings I already know about. These are the open spaces of time that I have in the afternoon so I can work on projects. And a lot of times we start, at the ground level of just all these text messages and emails and everybody kind of poking at us and picking at us and say, hey, I need this. And hey, let's go do that. And that's cool. You can always insert those into the open spaces that you know about in your week, but you really want to start with your roles and your goals, because that's going to help you have a more intentional and a more long-range view. That's going to help you be more proactive and less reactive. So for instance, like one of my roles is husband. I love being Sarah Joy's husband. Like I am totally into this season of my life and I'm so grateful for it. And so we're, in this new season working on our home and making it fun. And we've got these house projects and things like that. So those projects are related to my relationship with Sarah Joy and this home that we're creating together. So those are big. I've got like some really big projects that I'm still working on. I can't get that done in a day or a week, but if I know about it, I can keep taking steps in that direction week by week over, like a 30-day period or a 90-day period. If I, kind of reinvent the wheel and just kind of go with whatever inspires me in the moment, then I'll be too scatterbrained. I'll be too frenzied. But when I started like at that like 3-month view every quarter or that annual view, and you really can see farther than you can go. And so you have to be able to remember all those dreams and those goals and those projects that you identified in advance. And in my own life, and when I talk to other friends, it's like they have this frustration because they say like, man, I had this big vision, but it's taking so long. And I would say you need patience, not because your faith is weak, but you need patience because your vision is so big. And so don't be discouraged. Like, realize that that is the way vision is being developed, and it's being deployed through this incremental commitment, this incremental pursuit of staying on the path, and having those conversations again and again, and bringing up those dreams and those themes in your journal again and again. And it just creates this synergy in your own personal focus. And then you're able to distill, okay, what's the next step I can take in that direction? And so, you know, you got to get a way to get ahead. You're finding an environment either in your home or a coffee shop, or maybe you're a quiet time at work. And you got to get over that initial restlessness. And so you've got some aids that you can do, like ambient music or instrumental music to listen to, or you got, something to kind of get you going. You can organize things, you can optimize things, you can summarize what you're feeling or what you're facing. And then it's time to like actually show up, right? And to open up that calendar and like take responsibility for the next 7 days. And what we don't like to do is we don't like to make decisions. And so we try to keep our options open, and we're just trying to stay flexible. But you don't want to like breed this fickleness in you. At some point, you're going to have to make a decision. At some point, you're going to have to say, what time am I waking up? At some point, you're going to have to say, when is that passion project going to get done? And it's practicing that kind of intentionality, making decisions and keeping commitments, that forces you to come back to the calendar. And the calendar is not about being reminded of everybody else's work that they've made for you, or everyone else's commitments that they've made for you. The calendar is your own map of how you're using your time. It helps you visualize all the commitments you've already made, visualize all the things you're already involved in, and then better organize how you're going to move forward in a more cohesive way. And so when you kind of throw everything out there, at first you might say, whoa, I'm doing way too much. I didn't realize I was overcommitted. I was overextended. This is not sustainable. All this stuff is not realistic. And then you have to take the next step of saying no. You have to say no like a number of times in order to say yes to the right things. And then after you kind of clear out your week and clear out your day, and you're identifying like where the energy drains are and where the time wasters are, you're starting to like uproot those things and prune those things out of your time. Man, just visualizing what's really going on is so helpful. And we don't always want to see that, but we need to, because that is the first step to move forward. And then after we've cleared that space of all of the clutter, and we've admitted where we've been fickle or unwilling to make a decision or unwilling to commit, then we've got these open spaces of maybe 2 hours here or 90 minutes there or 30 minutes there. And now we have to take the next step of building in our values, building in our goals, building in the things that are important to us. And we build them in the form of time blocks. So time blocks are how we actually build our lifestyle. Time blocks are how we actually build our future. And block by block, we're just identifying different single focus activities that we can be doing. And then what's really fun is when you have like more high power, like high level narrative of who you are, who you're becoming, what's important, what's possible. Like you got all of this like pent up passion and purpose in you. Now you're able to kind of story tell the kind of day you get to have, the kind of week you're going to have, and you can build these time blocks in a way where they're flowing together and they're synergizing together and they're working together. So anyways, I'm kind of off script here, but hopefully this is helping somebody. the easiest way to create a working plan for the week is to start with what you already know. Literally account for everything, like breakfast, lunch, dinner. You could put down repeating meetings. You say, well, I already know about that. Exactly. You have to give an account for it, because otherwise you're going to make assumptions and you're going to be double committing yourself or triple committing yourself, where you said yes to like 2, 3, 4 different things at the same time, or you were leaving your options open. You thought that was all free when really there was something happening then. Put the one-time things that you know about on the calendar after the repeating things. So after you do the obvious stuff, then you do the things you know about for that week. Like, you know that birthday party is coming up. Like last week, my niece, she turned 1 year old, and it was amazing and fun. And so we did that. Well, that's not happening every week. That's not a repeating meeting like, team time. So you lay the groundwork. You start with what you already know, start with the obvious, then add on those one-off things or those one-time things. And then you're going to be building time blocks for your goals and your projects. So if you have identified a 90-day goal, it needs to show up every single week until the due date. It's not just going to be like, I'm going to wait 2 months and then give it like, 6, 7, 8 hours straight. And if you know about something in advance, it's because you need to be doing something about it in advance. You shouldn't know about something that's coming up just to wait on it. You know about things in advance. You can see things coming on the horizon of your calendar, so that way you're taking steps towards it, or you're getting ready for it. And so having this ability to kind of zoom with your focus, you zoom out to the month, you zoom into the week, you zoom out to the month, you zoom into the week, and you're constantly matching where you are with what's coming up next. And you're making sure that those time blocks in your day are keeping you focused, keeping you in alignment, so that way you're not procrastinating, but you're preparing. You're not procrastinating, but you're preparing. So I'm kind of out of time here, but I do want to bum rush 2 more tactics. So if you're good with staying on a little bit longer for 2 more tactics, say yes in the chat, and I'll try my best to get through this. There are 2 really helpful work practices that need to be understood to improve your morale and your momentum. And the first one is called pre-work, and the second one is called rework. So these are 2 like skills that you can get better at. It's like playing piano. It's like having confrontational conversations in a healthy way, speaking the truth in love. Like, you don't know that at first, but you can practice that. You can learn how to do that better. So these are 2 things that once you kind of get the mindset for it and you get the kind of the why behind it, you can begin to practice this again and again. And when you have a weekly planning session, you are going to be constantly pre-working and reworking on that plan. And so the first one is pre-work. Pre-work is the work we do to set ourselves up for success when it's actually time to work. Pre-work is the work we do to set ourselves up for success. So some easy examples I've talked about before is like when you go on vacation and you're going to be away from your work. Well, you want to make sure that you got your bases covered. Everybody else is going to be covering for you. You're thankful. So you're going to do a little extra leg work up front. So that way, when you step away, things don't fall apart. And that's pre-work. You're preparing for the vacation time. You're preparing for other people to carry these pieces for you. you go on a vacation and you get on the airplane and you want to make sure that you have a book to read or a jacket if it gets cold. You're thinking of all the contingencies and you're preparing before you show up for that moment. You realize that if you get on the airplane, you're stuck, right? You're not leaving the airplane. You're there. So whatever you prepared, that's what you're working with. And that just kind of applies to other areas of life. Pre-work is now us doing that setup for a great week, doing that setup for a successful project. And so I want to kind of drop a random story that I hope will emphasize the importance of pre-work. And this story is from World War II. And to illustrate the idea of pre-work, I want to tell you about two different battles that happened during World War II. Now, the first battle was called Operation Jubilee. It was 1942, August 1942, and an Allied Canadian force was attempting to take back valuable ground in order to turn the tide for World War II. And they assumed that they had the element of surprise. Now, that's important. They assumed that they had the element of surprise and that would be enough to win the battle. And so with this initiative, they said, we're going to just go for it right away. We're going to throw ourselves into this. And the problem was that they didn't do enough pre-work. They didn't do enough preparation. And so due to poor planning, the troops went in unprepared to a humiliating defeat. This is so sad and it's so painful. And we really need to personalize this because otherwise we'll be using the same poor practices and we're basically, preparing to fail, so to speak. What happened at Operation Jubilee is that they didn't think ahead about like what kind of soil was on the beaches, and the sand was very shallow. And so many of their tanks, their armored tanks, when they were trying to go up the banks, up the beaches and take that ground, they were sinking in the sand. They couldn't go. They were getting stuck. There was miscommunication that cost time and then ultimately cost lives. And what this did is it put the war effort even more prolonged than before. The tragedy of this battle, Operation Jubilee, was out of the 4,963 soldiers that were deployed at Dieppe, this was in France, 916 of these soldiers were killed in combat, and then over 2,450 were wounded or captured. So this idea of the element of surprise, that we have the upper hand because of the immediacy, that we've got this and we're just going to like throw ourselves into this unprepared, it was very costly. Now, with a commitment to do better, Operation Overlord was being developed and deployed with a much different approach altogether. You may have heard of D-Day, right? D-Day was that big battle in World War II that really changed the tide. And they looked at Operation Jubilee, the failure, really as a textbook for what not to do. And so they made it a point that they were going to do the pre-work before the battle. And this was over 2 years of preparation because this was going to be one of the largest amphibious invasions. This was going to be like a massive operation. They were going to be coordinating and collaborating with so many different people, and they were using like so many resources, and there were so many logistics to work through, and they realized that they couldn't afford having another defeat or having another failure, that they would not be able to kind of muster all of these resources and people like this again. This was really like their last shot in a way to see the war being resolved. And so they wanted to make it count. And that is so big. We have to make the week count. We have to make the planning count. Now, that is much more serious than a weekly planning session, but I really do want you to have that sense of ownership, that sense of responsibility, that sense of commitment to doing the pre-work. Let me tell you some of the things they did differently. Knowing that there would not be another opportunity to win the war, they invested all of their resources to make this invasion count. The amount of preparation that went into D-Day is simply unprecedented. For every one soldier that was on the front lines, there were 5 support staff running logistics. There were many unknowns and many difficulties that they would go through, but they did so much research. They were researching thousands of miles of potential places where they could have this invasion. They were like communicating and getting pictures and soil samples. They were testing new equipment that they could put on their tanks. They were just going to great lengths to do the pre-work to make sure that the battle would be a success. And that's what we have to think about when we're going into the week. Many times a lack of pre-work, a lack of both planning and preparation will actually cancel the commitments that we make to ourselves and each other. Like, you can make a commitment and then cancel that commitment if you're not putting in the pre-work. And so I know I'm just saying an hour a week, but out of the hour that you get in the planning session, now you're going to be starting pre-work. Now you're going to be blocking time to be planning and preparing and getting things organized. This is something I want to get better at. This is something that I have felt a lot of personal momentum around. Whenever I'm working on this project, I'm working with our team. Pre-work is where you win. You win when you're doing pre-work. Think of what you're going to go through, like getting ready for a vacation, like I mentioned, or getting ready for a big holiday party. Preppers understand that you only fall back on your preparation when the unexpected happens. Therefore, we want to emphasize pre-work again and again. One of the skills we can use for pre-work is called batching. Batching, it's an easy concept, but basically it requires us to make a lot of decisions at once. And so we're not just working on, one day, but we're working on 7 days. We're not just working on, a project for 1 week, but we're using that time and that creative flow to get ahead again and again. And you really can batch in multiple areas. There's, meal prepping. There's email templates. There's, creating content for social media or, for your projects. Batching is really one of the signature strengths in this pre-work idea. To manage the volume, you can use templates or systems to repeat your decisions and keep things fresh. The other practice that I'm talking about is rework. Rework is kind of a new concept for me. I'm playing around with it now. And the idea is that you don't just want to work on a big project one and done. Like, I used to work, I used to stay up really late, maybe the night before something, and I would kind of cram, for the due date. And then I'd be like, whoo, I got it done. That was awesome. Felt great, crossed the finish line right at the nick of time. But it's kind of an inefficient way to do it. Rework is making sure that our projects end up as successful as we intended. And if you don't do rework, if you're not willing to rework and rework on the project, you only have like one touch point, and it's leaving a lot of room for error and for mistakes. You may not even catch it. A very, very simple example is like when I make my blog, I'm getting in the habit of not just doing it one time, but going back to the same blog post or the same project multiple touch points. So that way I'm shaping it. I've thought about it a little bit more. I have more clarity. I can find grammar. I have more chances to improve the overall quality. And so the worst thing that we can do is wait until the last minute and then have one long drag out work session. I know it's fun, to get your energy drink or to get your caffeine hit and, stay up all night and really bust it. And that's fun, but it's not the best. A one-hit wonder all-nighter is rarely going to be as successful as you can be. The way to work more effectively, in my opinion, is to give a project multiple touch points. Have multiple touch points to go back to the same work over a longer period of time. And so when you're in a weekly planning session and you can identify both the things that are coming up that week, that's pre-work, what do I get ready for, and the things that are coming up in the month or in a future month, that's rework, because now you're revisiting those projects again and again, and you're building time blocks in to pre-work to get ready for something that's near, rework to go back and revisit something that's coming up again. These are two like right and left arm movements that you can just be practicing again and again. The way to work effectively is to give a project multiple touch points over a longer period of time. This could look like getting a project completed 20% and then 50%, and that's cool. But really, kind of a better way to understand this is like multi-phase focusing, and to begin with a really high-level look in advance and then zoom in, zoom in, zoom in with more definition as you get closer to the day of. So you start with like a framework and an outline of what this is going to look like. And you get as much direction and you make as many decisions as you can from that view. But then you revisit it and you come back, in a week or in a month, and you're able to make even more decisions and more clarity. And during that time, you haven't just been sitting around waiting. You've been building in these time blocks to have these multiple touch points to get you closer and closer to the finish line. Now, I think this works really well with a chronological approach. And so it just makes sense, right? You start with like an annual plan, and then you're zooming in with your quarterly 90-day view, and then you zoom into your 30-day view, and now you're zooming into your 7-day view. And that's why the weekly planning session can be so much fun. The weekly planning session is not you wondering what you're going to do with your time or crying about how everything is, not working for you, but it's really that disciplined commitment to come back to decisions you've already made, to focus on what is important and what's possible for that day. So, all right, definitely a massive download today, but I'm super passionate about this. These are some of the kind of productivity practices that I'm going to be putting into effect. I'm seeing great success with pre-work, and I'm going to be doing more rework as I go from here. I want to show you some of the pictures of D-Day. This is me and Sarah Joy at D-Day, Normandy, and it's just amazing. You wouldn't even know that, there was a real battle going on there, a horrific battle that was going on there, but I'm super grateful. I felt like super moved by the whole experience, and it's great. So put all this into practice. Commit to a weekly planning session. Get in the zone with all of those tips and tactics. And then when you get there, be zooming back and forth between the big rocks each month and the time blocks each week. And then when you're putting your time blocks together, be thinking about how you can use pre-work to show up ready, and rework, which is basically being willing to revisit a project and not just kind of get it done with, but be willing to come back to projects that are really important to you, so that way you can level them up in their quality and in their character. If you appreciated this and this was helpful and clear, I would love for you to be a part of our email community with the Future Friends. And I'm just, investing this right now. I really just want to add value to a lot of people. And I hope that this is encouraging and equipping for you. I will be back tomorrow, hopefully with a little bit of a shorter download. I really appreciate it going extra today. I don't take that for granted. But I want to give you a gift just for staying on. It is a free fail-proof planning guide. You can click the link below, or you can go to peterbirchfield.com and get it there. And again, I will be back tomorrow talking about retooling. If you have any questions, go ahead and get them my way for Future Friday. I'm so excited. I've got another friend who is an amazing leader. He is an entrepreneur. He's mentoring youth, and he's just an amazing disciple maker. So I'm really looking forward to figure out how he's working on so many different things. And he and his wife are very intentional, and they use a calendar very effectively. So we'll be going back and forth on that. Remember, you are going places. And if you really believe that, then you're going to make today count to prepare to go there. Have an awesome day. We'll see you tomorrow.